Hiya once again, Tim with Tim's Computer Repair. I have this custom built computer here on my bench. Customer says that it's doing all sorts of strange things. A few blue screens, then it died. Ended up on my bench. I troubleshot it. Turns out the hard drive was completely dead, or the SSD was completely dead. I ordered a new drive, installed Windows on the computer with no problems. Tested it, you know, it's got drivers and all that, latest drivers, chipset drivers, graphics drivers. It's got an NVIDIA card in here. It installed everything just fine. I put some functionality software on it, and it took everything just fine. Everything seemed normal. All the updates were done. Didn't hiccup at all. No problem. Customer gets it home, starts having these weird, funny issues. Like that. Just like that. Screen blanks out. Completely. Yep. Keyboard's lights don't work. That's exactly what she talked about. It never did this once here in my shop. But I was going to show you some tests that I ran with OCCT. But yeah, for some reason that wasn't showing itself when it was first on my bench. It was running flawlessly, honestly. So let me see if I can get the desktop back up, and I'm going to show you guys some of the errors that I got running OCCT. Okay, I just completely powered it down, powered it back up. I was able to boot into Windows once again. When I first booted this up, when I got it back in my shop, it was sitting here running just fine. So I use OCCT to kind of push the hardware to see if I can replicate the issue. Obviously the issue just showed itself just now. It's the first time. This has been on for about 20 minutes. The errors that I got with OCCT, let's see, here's the first run. I was getting those errors there, WHEA errors, which is a hardware error, but you can see here there are errors found on the cores, CPU cores, several of them. CPU core 4, CPU, well, it's all core 1 is where the errors were coming. I stopped the test. Obviously there's a problem. So I ran another one. This is just stressing the processor, and it comes up with these errors now. Same WHEA, core 7 this time. So it definitely has something going on, no doubt. It appears to be the processor. However, you know, OCCT stands for overclocking checking tool, overclock checking tool. I'd like to find out if there's an overclock on this machine. I don't think there would be or should be, simply because there's just the stock cooler in this computer. It's an AMD build here. I'm thinking about maybe let's just go into the BIOS and maybe set that to defaults and see if that clears anything up. Let's see, here's overclocking settings. Let's see what we got. Yeah, everything is on just fine. Normal. Frequency is on auto. I mean, XMP hasn't even been enabled on this. Everything is set to auto. Voltages look good there. It's a Ryzen 7 1700. Yeah, that looks good. Yeah, it doesn't look like any sort of overclocking at all. Not even the RAM is being done on this. So everything is on auto. Just for the heck of it though, I'm going to load defaults. Save and exit. Let's restore defaults, yes. And then let's just save changes and reboot. Let's see if we can come back up to Windows now. Should be able to. And then I'll run OCCT again. Booted right into Windows pretty quickly here. Let's go ahead and open OCCT. Let's go ahead and run CPU stress test as we did before. Start. CPU's at 100%. Yep, there are the errors. Here they come. Yeah, so we're still getting errors. Yep, there it is. Here they come. All right, I'm going to stop that. All right, so setting the BIOS to defaults did not do anything at all. We definitely have a hardware issue going on here somewhere. So I think what I'm going to try to do now is to swap out that processor. I'm going to try to swap out that processor with another processor that I have, a test processor, and see if we still get those errors, all right? See how that goes. Okay, I do want to let everybody know that I did try a known good power supply hooked into this board, and I'd ran the same OCCT test. I had the same processor errors, so it's not the power supply. We'll just go ahead and remove this stock heatsink off this processor. Okay, I just heard the back plate drop out. Just carefully. Ooh, it's stuck on there pretty good. You don't want to rip this off. That's stuck on there pretty good. You know, it's not coming off. I'm twisting. It's not even turning here. I'm going to go ahead and apply some heat to this heatsink because I don't want to rip the processor out of the socket. I'm just going to add a little heat here to this heatsink. Boy, this is really on there good. Certainly is. Wow. This is the worst I've ever seen. It's in there. It ain't coming out. How? It is really hot. It is on there. Not coming off. Never had one this bad before. Okay, I've kind of made a decision here that I'm going to have no choice but to pull the processor out of the socket. I mean, it is loose from the back plate. There's the back plate. So, I mean, literally, I mean, it got so hot that I couldn't even touch the heatsink. And it won't come loose. I have to pull the processor out of the socket. Unfortunately. There it is. So that guy's on there. I'm going to tell you what. Sometimes you have to do that. Okay, so I was able to pop off this processor with a little bit of help from this guy. kind of wedged underneath there. Sometimes you have to do that, but I did get it off here. Looks like it's pretty dried up on there, that's for sure. Okay, as you can see, I got my test processor in there. We'll clean that off. Add a little thermal compound, some fresh thermal compound, and see what results we get. So this is a Ryzen 3 3200G, but this is just a simple test, just to make sure we don't have something going on with the motherboard or something. I've got my own stock cooler here that goes on that. So this is what we'll use in this particular case for this little test here. Okay, got everything else plugged in there. What I'd like to do is probably clear the CMOS again, since I put a different processor in the computer. Clear CMOS. Clear CMOS check. Battery back in. Plug in keyboard and mouse. Plug in some power. We need to plug in the CPU heatsink. Power it on. See if we get us a post going here. Nothing at all. It's not even moving past, what is that? It's not moving past CPU. Now that's a good processor, so very interesting. Not moving past CPU. Yeah, the LED light over here, the troubleshooting light, can't see it on this, isn't moving past the CPU. So now we're dead in the water here. That's a known good processor. Let me test this other processor on my test motherboard, this one that I pulled out, this one here. Let me test this on my test bench. See if it throws up errors on that too. So I now have this put in my test motherboard that I know works. We're going to load Windows up on this and see if we can run OCCT and see if we get those errors on this chip, on this board. We already know that the board won't even post now on the with my known good Ryzen 3 CPU. So that pretty much tells me that there's an issue with the board. I am thinking anyway. So this is the stock heatsink that came with this Ryzen 7 1700, a little thicker. I'm going to use that. And yeah, let me get all of this set up, and we'll go ahead and test this. All right, I've got that old Ryzen 7 that was throwing out those errors installed on this test motherboard, video card, power supply, everything's all hooked up. Keyboard, mouse, known good stick of RAM. I've cleared the CMOS since we have a new CPU on this board. I have a drive now connected to this so we can install Windows on it, so we can test with OCCT. Now we can go ahead and power this on. We should get a post. We've got power. Okay, we've got a reboot, looks like. That's good. That means it's detecting the processor. Another reboot. Reboot, select proper boot device. I'm going to go Control-Alt-Delete, and I'm going to get into the BIOS, check my temps real quick. So at this point I'm kind of leaning towards a bad motherboard on that. Let's see. CPU temp, 19C. Wow, that's pretty damn good for a hot stock heatsink, huh? Okay, I'm going to get Windows installed on this guy, and let's get some tests run. Get this started. We have started. CPU is at 100%. 100%. Still waiting. Still waiting. So far, so good. So far, so good. No errors so far. 1 minute in. We originally had errors at this point before. 1.5 minutes in. Temps are at 47 degrees. 2 minutes in, no errors. Now by now, but under 30 seconds we had errors every single time on that old other motherboard. So it's looking like the processor is okay. It's definitely pointing to what looks like the motherboard as the issue. Just goes to show. This was throwing up CPU core errors. We have a motherboard issue with that computer. I can't even get it to post with the known good Ryzen 3 processor in it. And the troubleshooting lights doesn't move past CPU on that board. So this is one good way of troubleshooting whether it's your processor or motherboard. Even though this was showing CPU issues, CPU core issues, you have to test to be certain. I'm going to recommend another motherboard for them, and we'll give them a quote and go from there. I'm Tim with Tim's Computer Repair. I hope this helps somebody out. See you soon.